On October 21st, British Admiral Horatio Nelson had caught a French fleet at Trafalgar and utterly destroyed it, at the cost of his own life. Great Britain had lost its greatest sailor. But never again would the French challenge the might of the British Navy. Napoleon no longer had a fleet he could count on, and now in December 1805, the Grand Army itself was in danger. Although Napoleon had crippled the Austrian army and driven the emperor from Vienna, his conquest threatened to become his undoing.
It is winter, it is December, it is cold, he's surrounded by a hostile population. The Russians are coming to help the Austrians. His troops are dwindling in number and in supplies. He was almost 1,000 miles from Paris.
All of Europe had become a deadly trap. He was deep in the center of the continent. Prussia was now threatening to declare war. And on November 22nd, the Russian and Austrian armies finally united in a single fighting force. 90,000 allies against 75,000 Frenchmen.
You might say any sensible man would have stopped and perhaps done a deal with the Russians and the Austrians. He really had two choices, either to go back or go forward. Napoleon would never go back. So he thought, one more battle.
As November drew to a close, Napoleon roamed the countryside, studied the battles of Frederick the Great, pored over maps. Then he pointed to a spot not far from the little village of Austerlitz. It was a hilly field bounded by woods, marshy ponds, and small towns. Here he would make his stand. Looking it over, the emperor told his marshals, "Gentlemen, examine this ground carefully. It is going to be a battlefield. You will have a part to play upon it." 70,000 Russian soldiers would have a part to play too. Commanded by the Tsar himself, Alexander I. Just 28, he was eager, one of his aides said, to experience and win a battle, to cover himself with glory by defeating the invincible Corsican upstart. Vain, inexperienced, the young Tsar was an easy target for one of the greatest strategists who ever lived. Napoleon was outnumbered, but if he could control the battlefield, make the Tsar attack him when and where and how he wanted, he had a chance to carry the day. The battlefield at Austerlitz was dominated by a gently sloping hill, the Pratzen Heights. "If I wanted to stop the enemy," Napoleon said, "it is there that I should post myself. But that would lead only to an ordinary battle, and I want decisive success." Napoleon's army controlled the heights, but he would now sacrifice his commanding position in a daring gambit to lure the Russians to attack his right flank. With a thin line of soldiers on his right, he ordered his men to abandon the heights and watched as enemy forces occupied it. Napoleon knew his man. The Tsar called a council of war and argued for an immediate attack. The Russian General Mikhail Kutuzov objected. Blind in one eye from a battle wound, the hard-drinking veteran was contemptuous of his Austrian allies and wary of Napoleon.
Kutuzov tried to calm the Tsar's fervor. He sensed the trap. Perhaps he didn't understand the trap, but he felt it. He was an old fox.
The night before the battle, Napoleon dined on his favorite campaign dish, potatoes fried with onions. All across the French camp, his soldiers settled into their evening chores. He had already inspected the troops and sighted some of the cannon himself. He appeared a model of optimism and confidence. As he rode past his men, they shouted, "Long live the Emperor," and waved flaming torches. The camp blazed with light. It was December 2nd, 1805, the first anniversary of his coronation. Napoleon told an aide, "This is the finest evening of my life." Daybreak came with an impenetrable fog. The top of the Pratzen Heights floated like an island above the sea of mist. Napoleon's soldiers woke early and shook off hunger and fatigue. Each man preparing for a fight he knew might be his last.
The main killer is probably the artillery. You were just blown apart, ripped apart, or had a neat hole put through you. Coming in close, when it did get to bayonet fighting, why, it was usually pretty deadly, more killed than wounded. And there was then, of course, the infantry musket, the heavy lead slugs. Those really smashed and tore. Modern rifle bullet punches a neat hole, but these things just ripped, and they shatter bones and take out whole sections of the flesh.
From his command post on the Pratzen Heights, the Tsar, eager for battle, ordered the Allies down off the high ground toward the far end of Napoleon's weak right flank, anchored in the little village of Telnitz. Napoleon had a surprise waiting for them. 2 divisions of soldiers he had summoned from Vienna. They had covered the 70 miles in only 2 days. Napoleon had put reinforcements where they were least expected, and faster than anyone thought possible. His troops, exhausted after their long march from Vienna, struggled to hold on. So far, Napoleon said, his enemy was behaving like they were conducting maneuvers on his orders. Napoleon had wanted the enemy to attack his weak right. He now had enough troops to defend it, more than enough for his own plan: an attack on the Pratzen Heights, which was left with few defenders. Napoleon watched from his command post above the battlefield, waiting to spring his trap. Hidden in the haze at the bottom of the valley below the heights were 2 French divisions, 17,000 men. Napoleon gave the order to advance. One sharp blow, he said, and the war is over. The fog was so dense the French soldiers could barely see 10 paces in front of them. As the sun began to rise, Napoleon's army appeared out of the mist. On the top of the Pratzen, the Tsar watched the French materialize out of the valley. "They come out of a clear sky," he told an aide. "Your Majesty," his aide replied, "you should rather say they come from hell."
Alexander didn't know what to do. He was at an absolute loss. From that moment on, he completely lost control of his army. After the panic on the heights, he no longer participated in the battle.
Finding themselves attacked when they thought that they were the attackers, Napoleon said, they looked upon themselves as half defeated. By 9:30, the French controlled the Pratzen Heights, demolishing the center of the Allied position. Napoleon swept across the battlefield and attacked the Allies from behind. By 5 o'clock, Austerlitz was silent. "9,000 Frenchmen were killed or wounded, along with 16,000 Russians and Austrians." The Tsar and his army retreated. But the Austrian Emperor himself, Francis I, came to sue for peace from the little Corsican artillery lieutenant who had made himself an emperor only 1 year before. "A battle was fought today," Francis wrote his wife, "which did not turn out very well." Napoleon wrote Josephine, "I have defeated the Russian and Austrian army commanded by the two emperors. I am a little tired. I embrace you." Austerlitz had raised Napoleon's star to new heights. He had won his greatest victory, the victory of which he would always be the proudest. "Soldiers," he said, "I am pleased with you. You have decorated your eagles with an immortal glory. You will be greeted with joy, and it will be enough for you to say, 'I was at the Battle of Austerlitz,' for people to reply, 'There goes a brave man.'" 6 months later, Napoleon was still deep in Europe, preparing for war again. "Among the established sovereigns," he said, "war aims never go beyond possession of a province or a fortress. With me, the stake is always my existence, and that of the whole empire. Conquest alone made me what I am. Conquest alone can keep me there." Alarmed by France's growing power, now the Prussians challenged him. Napoleon made short work of them. "The idea that Prussia could take the field against me by herself," he said, "seems so ridiculous that it does not merit discussion." In less than 3 weeks, he brought the Prussians to their knees, taking 140,000 prisoners, leaving 25,000 dead or wounded. The might of the Prussian army had been entirely crushed. Napoleon marched triumphantly through Berlin to the strains of the Marseillaise, invoking the revolution, equality, and the abolition of privilege. Now master of most of Western Europe, he swept away feudal laws and forced the nations he had conquered to accept the new ones he had created for France, the Civil Code. But he did not govern in the name of liberty. "I have come to realize," he said, "that men are not born to be free. Liberty is a need felt by a small class of people whom nature has endowed with nobler minds than the mass of men." He reigned like kings of old, with 44 different palaces, including Fontainebleau. He believed his own glory, the glory of France, and the spirit of the Revolution were all one and the same. Like a good Corsican family man, he made his brothers and sisters royalty. Louis became King of Holland, Joseph, King of Naples, Jerome, King of Westphalia. I need my family to stabilize my dynasty, he said. If I distributed thrones according to merit, I should have made different choices. He made Sister Caroline a queen, Pauline a princess, Elisa a duchess. To his mother, he awarded the title Madame Mère.
Napoleon
always had a lot of respect for his mother. He always remained his mother's child, even when emperor. She was amazed by the success of her son, and she was afraid it wouldn't last. She was supposed to have often said, in her thick Corsican accent, just as long as it lasts.